Okay, this is going to be episode 42 of OverSight. Insert most obvious jokes ever about The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Or is that some sort of niche reference that all the young people do nowadays? You know, that's what's so sad to me, Monty, is that the way you know you've gotten old is stuff that was just incredibly mainstream and commonplace is now considered like a niche reference to the young people. They're like, oh, fucking hell, what a sick reference. It's not. It's just not. They even made a movie of that.
Was Douglas Adams ever like mainstream, though? That's the thing. I mean, the books are fantastic.
Well, I guess, to be fair, I guess the reason why I would be biased in that sense is, like, if you were basically, like, a tall nerdy and you grew up in the UK in, like, the 80s or 90s, that's like 100% the book you would
I read it when I was, like, a teenager, so sure.
So to me, it's like The Lord of the Rings, but I guess it's not quite as ubiquitous. Although one thing, actually, as a detail you might enjoy, because, you know, I know, obviously, with esports being, like, a modern-day thing, we have to fully hook all the young minds into the fucking brainwashing of society. So everyone wants to believe, you know, that hard work is what makes you succeed. And, you know, actually, if you want to make it in life, Monty, you better, like, you know, take, like, a formal education in a subject. You better study to a high level, have people overseeing you, helping your progress. Little bit of information for you. Anyone who thinks when they read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Douglas Adams is a brilliant writer. He was literally one of the most notoriously lazy people of all time. There's all these mad stories about where, like, when he was on, like, his later books, because, by the way, he only wrote something mad, like I'm going to guess, like, 6 or 7 books, like, in his whole life. He was literally doing mad shit. Like, he would haul himself up in a hotel, because his publisher would be like, come on, man, you promised, like, this book would be done in, like, 6 months. And then apparently, even when he was hauled up, like, in one place where, you know, you had nothing to do but write, he'd just be like, literally, this is in a documentary, he'd just be, like, sitting in the fucking lobby of the hotel, just, like, waiting for people to talk to and stuff, like, oh, hey, I'm Douglas Adams. Like, he was just literally procrastinating, doing what he's actually brilliant at, and what he's making millions of dollars doing. Like, that's genius. I love that story. It's the opposite, obviously, of, like, a heartwarming story for kids, isn't it? It's like, you know, if you just not as good, then this guy can fuck around in hotel lobbies and still beat you. You were putting in 10-hour days. Well, sucks for you to not be good in a basically like a merit-based field, isn't it? Anyway, speaking of sucking in a merit-based field, no, actually, sadly we haven't got anyone on this show that would apply to, I'm afraid. So, you know, sadly everyone on this show is actually succeeding. Like, that's how I actually know, Monty, that Overwatch is a pretty cool game in terms of, like, the pro players and the teams being very open to, like, media access and stuff, is because I'll tell you how things are in the LCS world, right? If I have a top team and I want to invite one of their players on, they literally have started doing that thing where it's like, well, I couldn't come on now. My team has a losing record. It's like, so? And they're like, yeah, well, when we have a winning record, we'll come on. It's like, oh, so was this some sort of mad thing where I can never talk to someone who's lost the game?
I can't even talk to the good players on the bad teams anymore. I can't, you know, exactly. I just think that's so stupid from a team perspective, because wouldn't they want more information out there, or, you know, to soften the edge of their defeats just by putting
the narrative, manage expectations.
A human face to those losses, right? Doesn't that make sense? I don't know.
Or even just get, you know, some free PR when your team's not doing anything in the game. At least you can, you know, win people over in the interview.
Exactly.
Or whatever. Yeah.
You think it would soften the blow of the losses if the fans had something, you know, something positive to attach, you know, to those losses at the very least. To be fair, though, Thorin, people do turn down this show that I have asked who are on these losing teams for very similar reasons. So I know you haven't been booking. I know you haven't been booking the guests recently, but I will tell you that this happens.
That's why you never had Shanghai players.
No, we just didn't have the right language skills. Unlucky.
Ironically, same problem they had. For a long time. I like the way people actually have taken that narrative now, Monty, that we were talking about in the last episode about how Ado was like the most unlucky guy in all of Overwatch. And that's now the new narrative. Like, it's not even about Shanghai Dragons because they've won now, so everyone's like, fuck them, whatever, they're all right, I guess. Ado, let's see how much we can extend this man's suffering.
I think he's at 35 right now, so Jesus. He has 8 more to go before he breaks the Shanghai record. I'm not sure that Justice is going to go 8 matches without losing a game, though. They'd have to lose versus Florida this next week and then also lose in the entirety of next stage. It would be hard to do that, but who knows what the Justice are out for, you know?
Could happen.
Sure.
Could happen.
Well, here's the funny thing, though, is because the Florida Mayhem is actually owned by the same group, obviously the Misfits people, that own Misfits in the LEC, which is the new name for the EU LCS in League of Legends. Well, the funny thing is, right, in the LEC, they actually spent massively this offseason and got what looked like a sick roster on paper. Like they were supposed to be like potential champion. And what's happened is they've already missed the playoffs. They fucked the first split up completely, right? So what's great is I saw that like the main owner of Misfits was sort of like, he made some sort of tweet that was sort of like, bad last couple of weeks for our two main teams, in the LEC. It's like, weeks? Did you say weeks there? Was it? I'll tell you what, just point me to the time when it was ever good for the Florida Mayhem. Like, I'll wait. Again, not Misfits. Like, you can't count that shit from like 3 years ago now, mate. What about the Florida Mayhem? Where's that?
To be fair, he did buy Rogue, or a chunk of Rogue, thinking that this was going to be a decent roster at one point in time, right? But obviously that wasn't the play. I think the real appalling thing is, at least from the Florida Mayhem perspective and the Misfits perspective, I know the amount of money that Ben Spoon is spending on this League of Legends team because I talked to some of those players, So, and it is very expensive to run that Misfits like that LEC team. And it's like, why won't you put at least part of that money back into Overwatch? Absolutely crazy.
Indeed. That's almost like going completely mental, saying, like, that there's a concept, right? We'll get into this in the show, obviously. But there's a concept, right, that a lot of people, I'm amazed how many people don't understand this, which is that it doesn't actually matter what player you want or what employee you want. If the price is too high, it no longer actually makes sense to sign that player, like there's been a lot of famously bad deals for very, very good players in traditional sports where, you give up like too many draft picks or you give up too many bench players. It's like, even if this guy's sick, you sort of like crippled your team, haven't you? Well, what's so mad about that scenario is, like, I actually do think so many teams, because one of the ones that I'm thinking of now is this signing of DK. So it's like, unless he literally fits your team, why be the one who tries to win the bidding war? Like, it's actually not worth it. Unless he's literally going to be the MVP of the whole league, I don't think that move was even worth it, because obviously when we get into it, that's a team that hasn't really even helped.
All right, to be fair, if we compare Overwatch League player salaries to CSGO or League of Legends, OWL players are still relatively cheap.
Oh, right. Not that much.
Yeah, winning that bidding war, yes, it is
fair enough,
a lot of money. But let's just say we're not close to 7-figure deals like you're seeing in League of Legends right now. We're still a ways away from that point. So I think that you can still sign star players for. It's not like these players are poor or anything, right? And very few of them are getting paid the $50,000 minimum. But even top players are not anywhere close to 7 figures a year. So.
Okay. Right, anyway, I better do that thing where I introduce the guests and then probably forget halfway through introducing one of them because I think of a funnier thing to say than whatever their life's been all about so far, and then just never do the rest. That's my favourite when I start. Like, I almost introduce one and then I do none of them. Like, I somehow pull it all the way back. So we'll start in the bottom left-hand corner this time because we've got Harsha, obviously been on the show many times before, back when he used to be a journalist. Then he obviously was going to be with the Washington Justice. He had a hot cup. Yeah, that's right. He was with the Shock first when they were bad, and then he had like a cup of coffee with the Washington Justice. They wrote their number on the cup of coffee. They were like, "Love to see you later on, big boy." Little kiss, heart, They never picked up. They
never wrote it down. Let's be very clear.
Yes,
that number was never written.
It was verbal. It was all verbal. Exactly. Yes, exactly. And then, so he's the
There's no evidence, okay?
Nothing that could be proven in court, anyway, or at least nobody willing to testify. So. Right, that's probably the kindest way to say it, Harsha, in many ways, isn't it? Just no one willing to testify. So, right. Then in the bottom right-hand corner, we've got Barroi, who is an analyst for the Toronto Defiant. There we go. One of the newer teams. Actually, not a bad team, to be fair. Who knew, Monty? Who knew? Remember that foolish young lad from the northeast of England who, when Overwatch League was announced, said there'll be two ways this goes. Either there won't be all the top players in the league because people won't recruit Koreans, or people will eventually figure out it's almost always going to make sense given a choice of do I recruit this Korean or this non-Korean, to always just recruit the Korean. So it's weird how all these teams that just have all the Korean players, they're also just right at the top of the league immediately.
Well, at the same time, though, you can be Florida and recruit Koreans and people.
There are bad Koreans. You're right. They're if anything, they're actually helping to make the case that it's not just about Koreans. You have to have good Koreans as well. Exactly. Well, yes.
I mean, I'm not surprised by this outcome, and neither should anybody who has a history in esports. And you know what? I'm a-okay with it. I just want to watch the best possible Overwatch. I don't need to feel some sort of like social media based connection with pro players. I just need to watch them click heads. That's what I want. That's what I want.
Well, to be fair, I actually have really started to enjoy the Korean players who are trying to use social media, but they're not really good at it yet. So there was that thing where in the story was that when NYXL played, they'd all eaten those like fire noodles the day before. Did you see this one?
Yep.
And so as a result, instead of just typing, I have had fire noodles yesterday, and then what they wanted to say, like they just literally, did you see Jonak, apropos of nothing, just did a tweet like, thanks for that first game, really need to take a shit. That sounds like you're saying you wanted to shit on them, Jonak. No one knows what you've eaten, mate. Like that's the most inadvertently spicy, literally fucking BM I've seen in ages. It looks like you just BM them straight up. It was amazing though. Don't anyone explain it to him, please. I need more of that. That's unreal, isn't it? Right, okay. Let's start off with one of the Korean teams, which has got to be the Vancouver Titans, right? Because this was a team that, like, I won't say people were like entirely skeptical, but some people thought maybe they wouldn't be the best, put it that way. Some people thought, maybe there'll be like an adjustment period when you come over to the West and you start going in now. Obviously, they didn't bring every single player, so maybe that'll be a problem, different management, etc. If you look at them at the moment, I can already see, right? I have a good sense, Monty, for analysts in the scene and journalists, right? And I have like a spider sense based on how they're phrasing things that lets me actually, sometimes if they're friends of mine, I can reach out to them when the spider sense tingles and goes, listen, you're about to make a huge mistake. I can see you are about to make a crazy prediction. And I want to just stop you right now and make sure you know what you're doing. So I've noticed, right, even though no one's fully outright said it, Monty, a lot of people are going as close to the line of saying they actually think the Vancouver Titans are like the best team in the entire Overwatch League, hands down. But they don't ever quite go there. They still have to like give it up to NYXL, but I think a lot of analysts are so close to trying to make this team the best. And they do look fucking amazing in the game. So what do you think of Titans at the moment?
Well, I mean, yes, they do. They did almost lose the last game of last night versus the Chengdu Hunters, right? And they did almost lose another 5-game series to the Guangzhou Charge. And I think, if anything, the Vancouver Titans still are somewhat weak. Okay, let's talk about what we saw last night. So a lot of what the Vancouver Titans have proven that they are extremely good at is playing aggressive Reinhardt goats. However, against some of these quad DPS compositions that the Chengdu Hunters were pulling out, Reinhardt goats is less than ideal, and it did either get some wins for Chengdu or it forced the Hunters or the Titans rather, onto some compositions that they didn't look as good on. When they've tried to play Sombra goats in the past, they haven't looked superb. When they've tried to flex onto DPS heroes like Somin Su on the McCree, it hasn't looked, it's looked good, but not as amazing as their Reinhardt goats. So I think that, especially in these matches that sort of devolve into chaos, like their Charge match and their Hunters match, there have been some weaknesses that I think the Vancouver Titans have been slow to adapt in games. Now, are they still one of the best teams in the league? Absolutely. But I don't think that they're this unbeatable juggernaut that a lot of people are attempting to place them as.
What do you think, Barroi? What's your sense for this team?
I think if they would play against NYXL, I think they would beat them right now. I've seen Quicks in NYXL as well. And I just think that Vancouver is probably the better GOATS team right now. And in my opinion, NY is probably not going to play anything but 3-3, because it's like there's like this thing in our team where we make fun of their coaching staff and everything, because it seems like all the players are being like programmed to play this like
robots.
To play like robots, play like whenever something happens, they have the perfect answer, but it's always the same. They always like react the same way on to any given scenario. And I mean, they're really good at it, but the thing is, it's if you can see the patterns, I think it's exploitable in some way.
Okay. I mean, no one's done it yet, but yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Titans would be the team to do it.
I feel like the Titans are on the same level when it comes to like goats, and since it's like for me at least, easier to see exploitable things in NY. I think that if Titans would research NYXL as well, I think they would see those cracks as well and probably be able to take maps off them or even win. I think they're stronger right now, so I think they would win, actually.
Okay. Right, come on, Harsha, where are you coming down on this one?
I mean, I'm not going to say something like we'll definitely win or something like that, but I think that like Monty is right in a sense that we did struggle against Guangzhou and Chengdu. A lot of that comes down to not like a lack of preparation, but I guess a lack of being able to practice against opponents that play that style. I think we actually play Guangzhou again. I assume they'll learn from the Chengdu match and learn from their own match and try and pull something similar next match. But I think we'll be fine against it, to be honest. Like, I think we've, especially now that the team knows it's kind of scary, I think we'll be fine against that sort of style in the future, and we have like the answers to it. I think that also, I agree with Barroi in a sense that New York kind of plays very robotic. I think that they're like super reactive and they're really good at what they do, but they're also, you see like the patterns emerging pretty easily, I think. So I think that we definitely could win if we win.
Yeah, the key factor here is that I think that Vancouver would just win against NY because it's like a matchup where I don't expect NYXL to play anything but goats. If NYXL would suddenly come up with playing like triple DPS or whatever, some weird Chengdu style composition, then they might be able to beat Vancouver fairly easily, but I don't expect anything like that to happen at all.
I mean, you never know with New York is the thing. They certainly have the players and the ability to flex onto a lot of these roles. So I don't know if I would necessarily rule it out, right? Like they certainly can, at the drop of a hat, move into a ton of wild compositions. They could run, Nene can play Widowmaker, Nene can play Tracer, Libero can play anything, right? Can go onto the Hanzo, go on the Pharah. So there's a lot of opportunities, I think, here for New York to do things if they choose to.
Yeah, I think the thing is that it would take some setup time for them, so it would take like a lot of preparation for the team to set up with new compositions. If they're practicing that right now, then I could see them pulling it off in playoffs, but it feels like because they play this very like robotic style, it's literally like you have the best players in the world and you program them to do like X when Y happens. And you need some time for everything to be set up perfectly, so your players do whatever you want.
I think the other thing is, though, to remember is that New York doesn't have any matches this next week, so they have 2 weeks to try new strategies for the playoffs, knowing that they're going to be coming in. So they're going to have something new.
Very carefully scheduled like that because they tended to just take a few weeks to practice things for the playoffs anyway. So it's like, let's just go ahead and give them the break anyway. Let's not make the same mistake twice, said the scheduling office.
I mean, it is a pretty sick advantage for NYXL that they do have the week off. Same with you guys. I mean, Toronto's in the same boat now. You guys have an entire week to just work on strategies. It really will give you, I think, a massive edge going into the playoffs because you can spend this week doing your own things, and then you spend the final week doing prep for your opponent based on the games that happened in the last week, and now your knowledge of who that opponent is going to be.
Whereas we have 3 days between our last match and the start of playoffs.
Yep.
That's unfortunate.
Fortunately, stage 1 playoffs don't actually matter that much, so it's not that big of a deal. But
I think there's a chance. So if we win 3-1 against Guangzhou, then we'd be tied with New York in map differential, and we might actually have to tie break against them.
Because you don't have any head-to-head games. But it wouldn't. No, it does matter because you go into. It depends on which side of the bracket you go into, right? Because 1 would face 8 and 2 would face 7 on opposite sides of the bracket.
And there's a chance like Shock is potentially 7 or 8.
Right.
No problem there then, right? Find a little matchup, between old mates. All right, Harsha, what do you think then on that topic I alluded to earlier? Because obviously a lot of people did wonder, like, would this team be able to come over and be as good as they were back in Korea? Like, how much of this team is kind of like just run away with a new name? Have they had to do anything different, do you think, in Season 2 from what your experience in Season 1 with the Shock was like? What do you think has been able to help this team just so instantly integrate or whatever?
I think part of it is that they did have, like the players are really close already, and, like, I guess they know each other really well. So on Shock, when we were just starting out, it felt like nobody was really that close until pretty much the end of the season, or like the middle towards the end of the season. So like that's definitely different. Also, I think that, well, one thing that they did do is Pagion actually wasn't on the team. Our head coach Pagion wasn't actually on the team until after they won Contenders, but before I think they won that Chinese tournament they played in. And so he kind of structures the team a little bit differently than Runaway used to be run in the past. So there is more structure in this team than I guess some might assume about Runaway, but I think it is, at least it's an advantage that they've played together for so long, basically.
Okay. Are you going to give us any sort of hyperbolic statement like Bumper is the best tank to ever play in this fucking league and you are all peons in comparison? You know, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but just wondered what your thoughts were on him.
I think you and Monty both know very well about how Koreans treat interviews, so I'll just leave it at that.
I mean, Bumper doesn't seem to treat interviews that way, so that's what's great about him. Like, it's been really funny to have Bumper do these interviews and like talk a little bit of trash and big himself up. He's been a breath of fresh air in terms of personalities to the league, and also you really see his personality coming out in his play, right? I don't know if you would be, or is the coaching staff happy with some of the wacky shit that he does? Because I know he takes a lot of risks. I mean, we think about that game versus Paris and, here come the Titans. They're up 2-0. They're playing on Horizon. They've nearly full held on defensive point A. Who's going to try a drop down 180 shatter? It's Bumper, because he's now confident. If he lands the shatter, you full hold. If not, he's confident they're going to hold on B, because that's how much he's disrespecting his opponent right now. Does that ever get Bumper? Like, do you ever wag your finger at him after the match and say, Bumper, cut that out?
I mean, a little bit, but also it's kind of just like the team style because Bumper is also the leader on the team in game. And so I think that, like, in those matches that you're talking about, like, I guess specifically like Shock when he charged the Diva off the map, and then when he went for like the 360 or the 180 shatter on Paris, like we were up 2-0 at that point. Like I think he was really like feeling the energy, and so he kind of went for those plays. We definitely
feeling the energy, feeling the
big Bumper energy.
Yeah, exactly. He's feeling the intense rush of absolutely shitting on his opponents, and he's like, "I'm gonna do it even harder now."
It's definitely something we've like spoken to him about, but also it's not something we're like too keen on changing, because he is like the leader of the team, like emotionally and in game. So.
Yeah. So I'd like to imagine, actually, if you translate that back to the thing I said about NYXL, that's how it all happened, was actually a translation error in the beginning. Like, someone was like, listen, guys, you've been winning all these games, but it's just lackadaisical, you're just going through the motions. I need you to get fired up. I need you to have that fire in your belly. I want you to take a shit on the opponent and tell him that's what you're going to do. And then they just totally misunderstood the whole thing. Obviously, again, they tried to follow the instructions. Instructions unclear. We won the game, and I said I was going to shake a shot on you, but I don't know why. So these things happen, mistakes happen. Right, Barroi, since you are in a rival Canadian franchise, you're ranked below the Vancouver Titans, and Harsha is right here and would have to hear and react emotionally to anything you said. Are you going to be some sort of sobering voice of reason to bring down the hype of Bumper? Because I'll agree,
yes,
at his peak he looks really sick, but he also does do some wacky stuff. So is when people say he could be like the best tank in the league, are they overrating him?
Yes, totally. I think if you take Bumper out of the Vancouver Titans, he would be a bot. He would be a fucking bot. Like, ooh. I think he might not be Overwatch level, because like seriously, it's a good thing. The good thing.
Here we go.
The good thing about Vancouver and why it works is because they played together for so long. But and the synergy is there. That's why they are so good, right? That's what Overwatch is all about. It's all about like communication and coordination. So if you play together for like so long and basically know each other's playstyle so well, then yeah, you're gonna be a good team. But I think if you take Bumper out of Vancouver and put him on a completely different team, then yeah, no way this guy is gonna be a top tank.
Even if he was on a really good team as well, like they have to have it's this specific style of team that's making him look good.
I think you have to build a team around Bumper right now. Like if you want to take him out of Vancouver, you would have to like build a team around him and like make everyone agree that they would look out for this crazy guy, like charging in and doing whatever he does all the time, giving him all the resources. You would have to like build a very specific style around him, and I don't think that I don't think that most of the teams would necessarily be able to do that. You need like players who are able to adapt to that kind of style.
Okay.
To be fair to Bumper, I don't think he would play the same way he plays on our team on other teams.
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because
So here's a question. Would he play the same way that he does right now on your team in a different meta? That's my question.
I don't think he played Winston the same way as he plays, I guess, Reinhardt now when he was playing in Korean contenders. So
I'm very interested in the answer to this question moving forward.
I'm personally not worried about it. I mean, I guess time will tell, but
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think it should be an issue.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be worried about it if I was in Vancouver either, because
Ooh, that
again, those players know each other. It works.
Keep the heat
right?
going. That's
So-
right. Yeah.
just don't split them up. Just don't split them up. And you're
Just don't lose, my friend. If you lose, then it all goes wrong. I like it. He's already. What I can't believe is he's already defied all cultural expectations by being like, I hate the way how ordered this team is, and they just do everything sort of by clockwork and exactly like an order and stuff. Like, fucking, are you German? What? I think you guys love that shit. That's like the most beloved quality in German hierarchy, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, I like that kind of style, to be honest. I would wish that my players would be programmable like that as well.
There we go. There we go.
I'm not sure your players are smart enough to be programmable like that.
Like, I always said to like friends that players are basically just plebs who are good at hitting heads, right?
There we go.
And-
That is actually
Yes.
my line from
Yes.
CSGO, mate. I often say
Yeah.
that. Because the thing is, obviously, there are certain players have, a very good game sense and understand the game. But there are some players that people don't realise. Like, I always say it like this. That guy would just be a random person in a public server right now if he just didn't happen to have, like, 30% better aim than the other pleb in the server. Like, that is the main reason why some people are in the game. Because it's like the old joke, right? There's a famous criticism that plebs, for some reason, used to say about Ronaldo in soccer, right? Which is they'd go, all he really does is score goals, which, in case you're unaware, is about 90% of like winning a soccer game. Like, the idea that that's like a failing is probably the stupid. That would be like saying like a boxer, all he does is knock people out. He doesn't sort of like, like circle them, wear them down. It's like, yeah, if you knock them out, you win the fight. What are you talking about? So I'm kind of with you on that one. It is. There are a lot of players who put it this way. If they came on this show, it's not that they'd be, not confident. They just couldn't break the game down in certain ways.
They wouldn't be able to articulate that. And like I was always told that that's not true, right? That they are like so
Sure.
they're amazing players, and there's Moth and all everybody's hyping him up. But getting into this team, I noticed, yeah, there are a lot of those players who are good at hitting heads. Yeah.
All I'm going to say is this. We do know, based on interviews and comments said, that essentially, for the first few stages of Overwatch League Season 1, the Dallas Fuel was kind of a player-run team. Enough said. If you look at some of the choices people opted into, agreed to, Taimu, see what I'm saying there, right? Anyway. By the way, if anyone actually knows Bumper, this is for you, Harsha. What you should do is, if you actually do play Defiant in some big game and you win, obviously he has to just do a tweet, and it just shows like, like a Winamp or something, like playing like AC/DC, who made who. That would be what you need to play, because obviously it also thematically ties in with my question about the Vancouver Titans, which is who made a who. But anyway, I'll just leave that one. That's like an Easter egg right there for people to figure out. So okay, like let's talk about the Defiant then. We've talked a bit about the Titans. Like, come on then, Barroi. What did you like? This is obviously a team where, again, it's all Koreans. What's your experience been like working with this team? Like, what was the initial expectations for you?
Well, first of all, it was like cool to just get into a Korean team, right? Harsha and me are both like those two foreigners lost in Korea land, right? And yeah, the expectations were I joined this team because I thought it would be really fun to just like build a new team, and everyone would rate us like really, really at the bottom of the league or something, definitely bottom half. And I was kind of certain that we would defy expectations in that way, and I guess our name is kind of nice for that. But yeah, I thought that we would, if we just get like the best tier 2 talent from Korea, or like some of the best, I guess, then it would be fairly we would have a high probability to make playoffs, let's say. And yeah, so far everything has worked out great, right? Everyone rated us like really lowly. All the experts had us in the bottom half of their power rankings, and right now we are in stage 1 playoffs. So for now, at least, it's going great.
Okay. Like, Monty, what do you actually think of like the general construction of this team? Because even though this is an all Korean team, like you said there, it was constructed, you know, it wasn't like they just took the entire squad from someone else.
It was hard to read, obviously, for that reason, and I thought it would take some more time to develop that synergy. So credit to the coaching staff for making it happen more quickly. Just from talking to Wolf, especially before coming into the season, he was pretty confident in the players' individual abilities. So I thought there was some chance for an upside. Obviously, coming together this quickly, I did not think was going to happen. And especially after the debut game, because if we look at what was going on with the Defiant in their first match, it was against Houston, it was pretty shit. Like, they looked super bad. And I later found out, just from talking to people and reading articles, that Ivy apparently had some nerves, I think, going into that first game, which caused him to just like mega fail, especially in that first half. And then claim he wasn't mega failing to Uber on Twitter, which I also thought was like weirdly hilarious, even though objectively, you know, anybody with eyeballs could see that Ivy was in fact wrong. So, but after that, I think for the most part, one thing that has benefited Toronto has been a relatively soft schedule. I mean, you guys also lost to Atlanta, but you know, you struggled a bit in you lost to New York. That's pretty understandable. But I mean, look at your wins are coming against Houston, Boston, Valiant, Chengdu, and even against Chengdu, you displayed a lot of the same problems that you had when we were talking about the Titans earlier, playing against Chengdu. Was as soon as you hit Volskaya and all of a sudden it's like double sniper defense, and then like Orisa, Torbjorn, Bastion, Reinhardt, B defense. All of a sudden you kind of fell apart there. You couldn't crack the code on the Hunters in-game fast enough. And it does seem to me that Toronto has made very deliberate steps to becoming a better GOATS team, and even a very good GOATS team as things stand right now. And the coaching staff seems to have been doing work. You see that cohesion. But again, you've sort of beaten lower tier teams.
Sure.
I mean, I think your most impressive win is against the Spark, right? Which, given the Spark's inconsistency, there's still a question mark. And it was a close series at the end of the day against Hangzhou. So I think it's hard to say how you're going to do in the playoffs, especially because I know your players had nerves issues. That could come up again on stage in a high-pressure situation like that. But, yeah, my questions are nerves, strength of schedule, and also just the, you know, people throwing unexpected things at them sort of threw them for a loop at times, it did appear. But overall, it seems like a team on the up and up.
That's fair. Like, we knew that stage 1 would definitely be our easiest stage, so it was like a nice start, I guess. But yeah, I think that right now, at least, we are in a good spot. It seems like we have been improving from week to week. So even though even though we had like a rough start, I guess. And I guess to be fair as well, we lost against Atlanta, but that was without Neko.
Sure. And obviously, Neko has been a huge part of you guys looking better. He's an extremely good flex support player.
But yeah, as you said, like we are still like kind of uncertain what will happen in playoffs. We will mainly use that for like gaining experience, I guess. That's like the main goal because we don't know if like nerfs come back again. I mean, all those players have been like in a final in Korea, but as it appears, Overwatch League has just been like a level above when it comes to pressure, I guess. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, for now, I guess we are kind of confident that at least we have a chance in quarterfinals.
I mean, I think too that one of the interesting things about this season is that because there are so few games, comparatively 28 to 40 last year, you guys going 5-2 in your first stage is excellent for the rest of the season. Because I think this narrative has gone a little bit under the radar, but Valiant going 0-7 is actually disastrous. It is disastrous, not only for stage 1, but for the rest of the season. Because think about it this way. All of a sudden, they have to win 2/3 of their games now for the rest of the year just to go 50%, right? That's really, really difficult to do. And I don't, even if they made, it was a favorable meta, right? Winning 2/3 of your matches, going to be tough with the level of competition in this league right now. And that's only to get back to 50%. And what does 50% get you? Maybe 11th place, right? And then like a low seed in the play-in tournament, which is like what? The 8th through 12th teams or whatever that are playing for those last like 2 playoff spots or what have you. So, or 7th through 12th, excuse me. 7th through 12th that are playing for those last 2 playoff spots. So if you're at least hot towards the end of the season, maybe you can do it, but you can't go winless in a stage. And likewise, you get such an enormous buffer if you have a 7-0 record in a stage, right? That means you have so much room for error down the line.
Yeah, it's really nice if you can do that, because especially at the start of the stages, I would expect a lot of like unexpected results, just because there will be new metas and you have like 2 weeks to practice those. So
and nobody knows what the meta is; it hasn't been set yet. Right?
Yeah,
right. And so if you're like Vancouver and XL right now, you are feeling really good about the rest of the season, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm just making the point that we have there's a pretty clear picture emerging even from just the start of the season due to how few games there are compared to last year, and how much more difficult I think the league is compared to last year as well.
Well, it's like the old joke would be like, you actually can't lose the league in 7 games, but they've pretty much done it. So it's impressive. That's a kind of record that's going to be hard to beat, I will say. All right, what about this then? So, Barroi, since we referenced him, let's talk about Neko, actually, because obviously this is one of the players where I think another player that Boston got a lot of credit for being able to scout. Obviously, wasn't on a good Korean team, turned out to be pretty good in Season 1, one of the better players. Circumstances he left in, bit interesting. Like, I've got a piece of advice for you, actually, Neko. If you want to get a really sick, because I know that Koreans love, like, Western culture, almost as sort of like an affectation. Like, they love having, like, weird phrases and quotes on walls. So here's a famous quote that we have in the UK, right, which is actually apparently like a mock Latin phrase. It's not like really what it's supposed to be in Latin, but here's a sick tattoo you could get on your arm, Neko, like right where you flex when you're showing off when you win a game for the Defiant, is you get this written, right? It's illegitimi non carborundum, right? And what it basically means is that's the point. It's mock Latin. It's like someone tried to like do it like, through like Google Translate.
Don't let the bastards grind you down.
Exactly. Don't let the bastards grind you down, because that is the key, Neko. That is the secret. If you don't let those bastards grind you down, you can still make it, my friend. Another Easter egg. Right. So what do you think about Neko, Barroi?
He's pretty good. Sometimes when I take notes, sometimes I just write down Neko Factor, because he just like hits a headshot or two, and we basically won the fight. It's like, okay, I guess that's it then. There's not much strategy going into that if he just like pops off.
True. It's like every time I see like a clip on Twitter when people put up like a highlight clip of Jonak, and then I always think like, oh fuck, what does he do here? Oh, just kill everyone, right? Well, yeah, I guess that is good, but actually I don't know why was I looking for like some sort of nuance when he just killed everyone? Yeah, that's again like the old Ronaldo quote. That'll fucking help. You know what? Like,
no, that's like sometimes when I'm watching NYXL, I'm like, wow, they should lose this fight. Oh, Jonak just killed the other Zen. Okay, well, I guess that they're winning now. That's fine.
I think the thing that tilts me the most, 'cause when I try to watch Jonak and imagine, like, you know, I'm seeing from his POV, so what should they sort of do to make it tough on him? I don't know what the answer is, because if you just let him fight long range, we know he just dominates and he can't do anything. If they ever try to rush him, that's where all these highlights I'm talking about come from. If you try to rush him, he just kills everyone up close and in more demoralizing fashion in many ways.
Turns out New York's style of protecting Jonak Zenyatta has been pretty effective for the last 2 seasons, regardless of what meta is.
It's because the problem is the NYXL coach, you know, doesn't want to take any risks, so he just tells like Jonak that really boring robotic strategy of just kill everything you see on the screen. Like, even though you're a support player, just kill them all. Just kill all of them. And then he goes, "Okay, boss, no variation this week. Nah, I just want you to kill them all this week."
I mean, what I love about the NYXL though is that their strategy is actually just like wait for somebody to make a positional error on the other team and then kill them. Yeah. And it works. They're very patient. And the crazy thing, one of the most interesting statistics, and I think we should actually start talking about stats because both of you guys are into that, obviously, and coming from Winston's lab, Roy, you've got a lot of insight. One of the interesting stats about New York right now, let me pull this up so I don't accidentally fuck it up. But is that they take very, very little damage as a team. Okay, I'm not going to find it there. Hold on, just give it a second. Talk about something else, and I'll find it in just a minute.
All right. Oh, by the way, actually, give us some... Go on then, Harsha, go on.
No, I was just going to say, because we were talking about Neko and Jonak, I think one thing to say about the league is that last year, I think there was very clearly like 3 top flex supports, like Jonak, Bidosin, and Neko. And then I guess AimGod came in later, looked pretty good. Sure. I didn't like his style of play, to be honest, but like he... This year, the flex support pool is actually insane. So there's like,
yeah, it's very good.
You have those guys. You have Shu, you have Twilight, you have Violet. Like there's so many like really good flex supports have come into the Izayaki.
A lot of Koreans I'm noticing is kind of the trend here. You know, I'm just waiting for a Western name. No. You're all just going to keep gathering like the original hunter gatherers in, you know, sort of huddled around a campfire, scared of the outside. But enough about the Houston Outlaws. Enough about that. So you know what, Monty? People don't realise they've done it again in another game. This reminds me of TSM fans from League of Legends, because you know what people used to always say is they'd say this: well, why do you rile them up? Why do you incite them to hit on you? It's like, oh, I see, right. You just haven't studied this phenomenon of these types of fans. That you actually have got the cart before the horse. You think what happened was I was really unreasonable, so they, you know, proportionately were equally unreasonable back to me, and that's now started, you know, like a cycle of hatred. No, just go and read the replies to like normal tweets about that team, and then what you actually realise is this is the real scenario. It's like if every week you just said your opinion and a gang of people jumped out and just beat you up. Eventually, right, you can't stop the gang of people beating you up. You may as well get a few shots off yourself on the way down.
Exactly.
So it's like, you know, exactly. You may as well fire first if he's coming at you anyway, you know, like, what can I tell you? Because I don't know if you saw this week, Monty, but obviously Young Sideshow got I would just call him, he got Twitch clipped, which is because the clip only lasts a certain amount of time, it doesn't contain the whole video. Exactly. So basically Sideshow was starring in fucking Gone in 60 Seconds, when he like that Nicolas Cage remake, the bad one. Because in this scenario, what do you know? He said something. The Houston Outlaw fans, this is going to shock everyone I know, totally misunderstood what he was saying, reacted themselves hyperbolically to what he'd said, and then didn't look up the context of what he said. I was shocked to discover that would happen. I know you, Monty, you've never had any experience with anything like that. And then obviously they just went completely in on him. So bad luck, Sideshow.
Speaking of that, I'm going to have a new YouTube series coming out on my channel. Which you'll appreciate this. It's just a joke series, and so what it is I'm starting to do ASMR videos with triggers for certain fan bases.
Right.
So my first one that's coming out is triggers for Houston Outlaws fans.
Oh my god!
You guys enjoy that.
Okay.
It's me whispering into a microphone trying to trigger their fan base. So
who even needs a tracer player? The meta will probably change. What if the meta changes?
exactly.
It's just saying shit like that. Okay.
It's pretty funny. It's pretty much exactly like that. So
Reasonable.
hopefully people will enjoy that. So that's my new fun series, because you know what, Houston Outlaws fans, if you're going to be dicks to me, guess what happens back?
Yeah. It's all right.
You know,
Now
you
we're going to
choose.
start our guided meditation. It's the Overwatch World Cup. Jake's playing. Look, he's brilliant, isn't he? Now we can imagine anything's possible. He could be an MVP of the league.
Exactly.
I can see where this is going already. Like,
It's pretty funny. I thought it was a good concept, right? I thought it was a good concept. Triggers for different fan bases. So I'm just going to keep making them about different teams and just slowly like peeling away all the team's fears. You know, asked Houston Outlaws to think about games 5s, all this other stuff. It's great. I asked them to, you know, when we were talking to Yiska, you know, think about last season. If you just won one of those games 5 versus Philadelphia, you would have been in the season playoffs. You know, it's just all the shit to like trigger them all the way down. It's good. It's good. Okay. So the stat I was looking for the NYXL was so Ben Troutman, Captain Planet, has been doing an amazing job in the league with statistics during the off season. He built a lot of new metrics and tools along with the business intelligence unit at Blizzard. Like we have like a dynamic learning algorithm now for team fights that the longer the season goes on, the observers can like flag when a team fight starts and ends, and the algorithm will learn based on when they're saying a team fight starts and ends, like, you know, where it is, so it can automate it better. So you get more accurate statistics about team fights itself, duration, damage done in team fights, who gets the first kill, who dies first, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the more interesting metrics, that is to say, and we've been not using this on broadcast because it is sort of difficult to understand what it is, if that makes sense. So we have this stat called expected deaths or expected final blows. Okay. And what that means is, so an expected final blow would be in a team fight. If I do 200 damage to a Zenyatta, that would be an expected final blow against that character. Okay.
Okay.
But because of sustain, especially in this meta, it might take, for example, 350 damage to kill that Zenyatta during a team fight. So there is a ratio of how much damage teams are doing versus how many final blows they are getting. So we have expected final blows based on damage versus actual final blows. And so you want to decrease that ratio as much as possible, right? So for example, you know, a very efficient team has been Vancouver, which is about, I think these are not accurate right now, but just as an example, ballpark, I think it was about 4.2 last time I was in the stats beta database and looking it up, which is expected final blows to actual final blows. Okay.
Is that like a league average or something you can compare it to?
League average is about like 5 to 5.5 off the top of my head. Okay. Now, Washington Justice was over 9, to put that in context. We're far and away the worst. Okay. So there's another statistic, obviously, which is the reverse of that, which is expected deaths versus actual deaths, right? So this is a metric that, you know, you want to be on the higher end.
It's going to be ridiculous for NYXL, right?
So they are by far, you know, in terms of right now, it looks like I'm looking at this graph and they have about 17 and a half deaths per 10 minutes, but their expected deaths per 10 minutes is something like 130. So they have a very, very large ratio, right? But they die the least in the league, and they have the lowest amount of expected deaths, which means they are both not dying and not taking damage, right? Yeah. So they're very good at playing terrain in a way that they don't take damage, or positioning in a way that they are receiving very, very little incoming damage. And you compare that to the Washington Justice, and the Washington Justice are about, these are not updated as of like, these are about 3 days old now, these stats that I'm looking at, but they have about 31 and a half deaths per 10 minutes compared to 17 and a half. And their expected deaths looks like about 170 as opposed to 130. So those are kind of the two opposite. Boston's also in the justice sphere of, you know, not being good. But we have these very interesting statistics.
So obviously, such a bad movie.
Obviously, I love these stats, and I think they're really, really interesting, but we haven't been able to figure out a concise way to explain them on air. Because you guys get it now, right? What I'm talking about?
Yeah.
But it's hard to talk about expected final blow to final blow ratio or expected deaths to,
Kids on Disney?
actual deaths, right? It's tough.
It's another way to just call it effective damage, because I think that's what it describes.
Yes.
It's just like, how much effective damage do you do? And effective damage is just like, if you do 200 damage and then Yatta dies, then that's like 200, or I guess 200 effective damage. But if you damage a Wynard for 200 damage and he gets healed up, that's 0 effective damage because he was healed.
Yes.
But yeah, that's really interesting. That's kind of what you expect from NY, because they play this a particular style where they just like bait you into them and then they destroy you, because you get like baited into their position while they like fall back, and you can do damage while you're doing that. But when you're at the point when you're like baited in fully, I guess, you wasted all your resources, and NY will just crush you with whatever they have, because they didn't really use like Zarya Bubble or like or like Brick Cookie, and so that's how they call it here. Okay,
that's like the Korean Babblefish Mangle translation.
Yeah,
I like that. That's good.
because Brick is throwing this fucking cookie.
Sure.
Right? So. But yeah, NY has all those resources.
They save all their cookies for Jonak.
Yeah, exactly. And meanwhile, you just did damage to like people that will get healed up anyways, while you're now getting crushed because you just don't have anything to defend yourself with.
Sure. That is what makes that style so sick when you see it executed over and over again. Is it just reminds me of in like combat sports when you have an amazing counterpuncher. Because the problem is, like, believe it or not, that style is very, very hard to intuitively like play against, because you keep thinking to yourself, because normally, as in combat sports, by the way, normally the person who is proactive has the advantage because the other person is reacting to them. So normally you would think, right, I want to be the person dictating the pace of the game and like the tone of the game and what the meta's going to be in this particular point. But it's like, if the other person is amazing, basically at just like punishing all your flaws, that's incredible. How do you play against that? That's pretty hard. And obviously then they've got a super stacked roster, so it's like they're doing that with like the highest sort of like powerful tools in the game, pretty much.
Yeah, and you have to wait around too, because the scary thing about New York is that they're constantly rotating and moving, so they're forcing you to change position as well. And if you somebody peeks out behind that shield, Jonak will kill them. So if you make any positional errors in this dance, New York will kill you. So it's really, really difficult to play against them. And I just thought that was a very interesting statistic that is, I think, highly indicative of their style.
Yeah. It's funny if you watch them play against teams that play like a kind of similar style, but obviously worse. For example, like Valiant. Sometimes when they played against Valiant, those two teams would just stand next to each other and nothing would happen, because both were just like waiting for the other team to do something, and so they were just like standing next to the payload, one team on.
Funnily enough, exactly what does happen in combat sports when two counterpunchers fight, which is they just circle each other, tapping each other's hand, and fans think like there's nothing happening here. It's like, that's because if one of them throws a punch, the other one's getting knocked out, mate. Like there's a reason they're not just going all in on this, mate. Like
so one of the things, like up to continuing on this point, I think probably the best match of this last week. Some fans might have liked London Shanghai. Some people might have liked that Chengdu Vancouver game. We actually had quite a few good matches, but for me, I know you didn't. You were probably super sad, but for us, it was entertaining. But I think what was really interesting was the NYXL San Francisco match. And the reason why I bring this up is one of the weird things that happened during that match. And I was on Sideshow stream. I called him for that match, and we were talking about it while it was happening. And it seemed like San Francisco was trying to play like New York, which was really odd, because they've been known for this super aggressive style, positioning Sinatra up on the high ground in front of the rest of his team, or Sinatra flanking around the backside. But they really played like just a pretty standard, like defensive GOAT style, which I hadn't seen from them before versus New York. What do you make about that matchup?
So something I actually know about San Francisco, just because I still talk to people on that team. and because we scrimmed them like quite a bit before the New York match, they were looking like really, really strong before the New York match actually. Like our whole team,
they looked good in the match. It was 4-0, but it was incredible.
Competitive one though. Yes.
But I think they played a little bit scared. Like they're normally, I think, more aggressive, and
that's why
it's like harder to react to them when they're playing really aggressive, I think. But they played a bit slower, I think, during the match against New York, and so
they did. That's why I was confused, because I was like, why would you play New York style into New York if that's not what you're known for? I didn't know if they were scared of getting picked off. I didn't understand it, but it was, I mean, they still played a super, super competitive match.
Right.
Can't remember who said this, but someone made a tweet where they were saying, maybe it wasn't you, maybe it was Sideshow, said something like about how the Shock was like a really good team, but they were like having a hard time closing
that was me.
Points out.
Oh,
but the thing is, though, one second, before you get into that, though, as I opened your Twitter to try and find the tweet, I did just see, in line with that, the very top tweet is just a picture of Oscar the Grouch in a trash can next to a bunch of LA Valiant jerseys, which is like, it's not that subtle, is it, Monty? Like, you know, that's not much of an Easter egg. That's just kind of a blatant statement, you know, like a little bit over the top, somebody said.
That's part of the joke I wanted to make about Valiant, because Barroi just called them reactive. They're not reactive; they're just dead.
Okay, there we go. There we go. So anyway, yeah, come on then. What was the point about Shock you want to make?
So what ended up happening with that tweet, which I thought was interesting / stupid. So the tweet was I was in our stats our stats like back end, right? And I was like, oh well, I've been watching these games when it came to playing against New York and when it came to playing against Vancouver. We look at all these maps and they were really close in both of the games. A lot of time bank, lots of overtime. And it just seemed like San Francisco Shock were losing against good teams all of those overtimes, which, to be fair, and I'm sure Harsha can speak about this in a minute, that was actually a problem that they had last season as well, which is that they were ridiculously unclutch. And so when I posted that statistic and I said, hey, look, this team loses 8% more team fights when they are in an overtime situation because we have these metrics right now. And I just tweeted that. And obviously, most of these overtimes are against New York and Vancouver. And in a larger sense, I would have the opportunity to explain the details around the statistic that, yes, in fact, most of them are coming, you know, they're stomping the lower tier teams. But there is a problem if we truly want to consider San Francisco, I think, a contender for this league. They can't just lose every single overtime scenario, because two good teams are going to find themselves in those scenarios a lot. And so when I say they're the most unclutched team, just there was this Reddit thread on competitive Overwatch, and I started looking through it, and people are like, well, what about the context of this? I'm like, it's fucking Twitter. Do you want me to give you this information, you idiots? Like, I can't explain everything about context in a medium that doesn't allow it. You ungrateful pieces of shit. I'm not going to keep tweeting stats if you call me a retard. You call me a fucking idiot every time that happens. Come on. I'm trying to provide you, the fans, with access to information that you wouldn't have. It doesn't mean I don't understand it, right? I'm just sitting here by myself trying to give you information. You can do what you want with that information, all right? Fuck you.
I know how you feel very well.
What I like, though, is that I do feel as though the Shock have inherited the mantle that Fusion had in Season 1, where it's like it's every analyst's team. It's another one, they're all really close to being like, if I say it now, they haven't technically become the best, so I would be the first to have said it. It's like everyone wants to like believe that they're like the sleeper OP team, because obviously they look sick on paper, so they just keep using that term all the time. Of course, their ceiling's incredible. These motherfuckers are more obsessed with fucking looking at ceilings than Patrick Bateman. Not a bad reference. Right? Anyway, keep that going. Keep it going. What do you think, Harsha? What do you think? Of the
so anyway, that was my like tilting moment. So sorry.
Let's tie that into analysis then.
Just like ridiculous. Anyway, so what do you guys think about the San Francisco Shock? Yes. Because, like I said, this is a team that has performed very well at points in time. They've absolutely crushed certain opponents, but when playing against the other top tier teams, even though they get like an inch away from the finish line and then fall short.
I think maybe part of it is nerves. I mean, the thing is, like, most of these players have had experience last season. Only Violet, I think, is the only rookie that's playing now. So, I mean, Super Sinatra are pretty young. Maybe that plays into it. I personally don't really know, though, just because, like, towards the end of last season, those issues were pretty much all worked out, I think. And I think maybe one thing that maybe should be considered, but I don't know if it's actually that important, is that Architect was actually probably the clutchest player on Shock last year, and this year he's not starting.
Why is Rascal in?
I think
Why?
it probably has to do with Rascal being more vocal, but I personally think they should play Architect, but I don't. It's the coaching staff's.
Rascal's obviously winning the political game. He's the puppet master, isn't he?
I find it so weird that they made that decision, and I think that there are other problems with, like, Violet keeps dying at weird times. I mean, he's too, like, YOLO solo queue sometimes where you just can't play that aggressive. You can't peak that aggressively in professional games. You will get punished, and he doesn't seem to realize that yet. So there's still growing pains for the Shock, and I'm still talking about them, despite the fact that I do think that they are legitimately a top 3 team in this league. So it's hard. It's just lame because they should be able to win at least some of those maps, I think, against Vancouver and against New York that they lost. If they really, when push comes to shove, if you want to be elite, if you want to be a contender for the top team, you have to do better in those situations.
Yeah.
I think maybe it is that they don't necessarily play to their style as much as they should, because it feels like this team would be, like, really well suited to just playing a lot of triple DPS and quad DPS. And I think that maybe they don't do this enough. To be fair, I haven't watched, like, all of the matches,
Sure.
but it just feels like they should play more like triple DPS comms early on payload maps, for example, which they aren't really doing, I think.
I'm not sure about that, just personally, because I know Super's Reinhardt is much stronger than his Winston, I think, and I think Sinatra Zarya has been a really big Sinatra Zarya. After our match against them, my whole team was like, what the fuck? Sinatra Zarya is ridiculous. And I think that's pretty much the reaction you get from, like, every team that plays Shock.
They could just play 6 Koreans, though. Or 5.
They can.
Have you ever thought of that? I mean, it does work for some teams.
I think what Sinatra is just amazing right now. And what impressed me, too, about the New York match is how much they focused Sinatra. Like, every time. So they played pretty differently. They didn't combo a lot with Graviton Surges, and they didn't put a lot of damage in. So if you watch carefully, so what Nene did is he would grab, right? And he'd catch Sinatra. And Mono would walk up, and then just with his shield, they would literally just shield off Sinatra from, like, the trance and kill him. And that was their entire grab strategy. It was like, is Sinatra alone on a flank? Solo grab. Can we get Sinatra in a grab? Grab him. Do not deal damage to anybody else. Just make sure that the line of sight is broken on his heels and kill him first in these fights. There was an ultra specific game plan going into the San Francisco match that New York had, and it was really effective. Like, you don't normally see that, right? You don't, you'd see more self-destructs going in, but that was not the play. It was just like, get Sinatra on his own. And in that scenario, San Francisco didn't come back and punish them. There wasn't anybody else who was like, oh, you guys are dedicating all of your resources to killing Sinatra. Somebody else needs to pop off here, right?
And even then, we did some similar plays, I think, when we beat them, where Monte pointed it out in a video, but like, John would isolate him with self-destructs a lot, or just loop him into our team, or stuff like that. So I think that he has been, like, I guess, pretty much the central point for the team, like the strongest part of the team this season, and, like, the best teams have just been kind of exploiting that. I don't know if a style change would honestly work. I mean, maybe you do have a point, but I'm personally more skeptical, I'd say.
I mean, I think that there are ways to deal with this strategy, right? If you're going to, obviously the best thing to do now is for San Francisco just to start using Sinatra as bait with a bunch of plans on how they're going to, counter any positioning issues. So, for example, if teams are going to do this, then you start baiting people in to using their abilities, and then have another positioning plan if they manage to take out Sinatra. You're hiding your supports somewhere. You're booping them away when they try and isolate him in the grav, right? Your Brigida's on the flank maybe, and you're coming in and stunning the people who are trying to make sure the line of sight is cut off. There are ways to play against this. And I think San Francisco has to start doing them.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Right, what actually, let's talk about the Chengdu Hunters then that you alluded to, because obviously the two people here, their teams played against the Chengdu Hunters this week, so we can get some insight here. So Harsha, he already alluded to it earlier, but it turns out even the Chinese are sandbagging now. They knew how to play goats the whole time. They actually were doing that shit on purpose. What is this? Explain this to me.
So,
you surely did not expect this. No way.
I didn't. Maybe I don't know if I could say this actually, but maybe Barroi can tell you about why they've suddenly decided to pick.
Okay, ominous.
Why would Barroi know?
I don't know why I should know, but we actually scrimmed Chengdu a lot before the season started, and they always played the Hammond style. They always played wrecking ball, and maybe it's just it like when we played Chengdu or when we studied them as well, it felt like if you beat their wrecking ball enough, they will swap to goats because they are getting like frustrated or something, and it's like a motivation thing.
That's the most counterintuitive thing I've ever heard. But okay, keep going. Yeah,
it's like they are so down or something because you just destroy them that they are like, okay, I guess we have to play like normal people do. But apparently that worked against Vancouver somehow.
To a point, yeah.
To a point, yeah. I mean, I did hear that basically Defiant asked Chengdu if they could run goats in practice just because they needed. You guys wanted practice, like warm up against goats.
Well, I think that was just once because they were the only team we played on like a match day or something. So we really didn't want to play against wrecking ball.
Right, at the risk of sounding a bit mean, isn't it kind of a bit like doesn't it kind of make practice against Chengdu not as that valuable if they play a style that no one else is going to play?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
But that's the thing about Chengdu is that you can't prepare for them either because nobody's going to be playing that style. Like you can theory craft all you want, but you won't have the in-match experience against them.
Yeah.
Also, there's even extra crazy stuff too, which is like you can theory craft, but the fact is that they know positions on Wrecking Ball that no other team knows. So they just sometimes surprise you because Eamon's like sliding off some fucking roof somewhere, pile driving with a bunch of mines, and you're like, wow, I didn't even know that could happen at that point, right? Because he knows all the Hammond spots, so you don't know them. Nobody knows them except for him and his team. So I think he can, like, they have some really, they're super fun to watch. I will say that.
Yeah, since we played them a lot before the season started, I always thought that like any team that plays in first week is going to have a really tough time, and I think it was Guangzhou, and they lost because obviously those teams for the first few weeks they would have never practiced against Chengdu. They don't know what they are doing, and they just play this crazy China style, right? It's like China does this in kind of every esport where they just play something completely different from anybody else.
They just have their own little meta, that grows up separate to everyone else.
And if you do that, it will definitely work against people that are not prepared for it. So I thought coming in that the first few matches would all be like 50-50s. How good is your team at adapting during the game? Because they will have no idea what's coming.
Sure. Well, that's actually one of the areas, where I've actually been a bit underwhelmed this season, Monty. You've got Bren out there. You've got some of the classic casters. I would expect more of the obvious puns. Like, how has nobody used the line yet? Like, and there we go. The style of the Chengdu Hunters. Hammond cheese, because they're best when they're on a roll. That's straight fire. Straight fire.
There are so many.
I'm here all week.
I think the crazy thing too is that with some of these Hammond buffs, and because nobody knows how the meta is going to go, Chengdu might actually be really good. Because what I love about Chengdu,
if they lure everyone into a Hammond meta, I can't handle it somehow. That might be the breaking point for me, Monty.
I like Hammond, but I think that what's one of the fun things about Chengdu is that unlike teams that just play random styles for no reason, Chengdu is actually really good at playing their style. Like they play it really smart and really well, and it's not ideal in any sense to the current meta, but are they actually like a very well coordinated team around that style? Yes, they certainly are, and that's what makes them, this wild card that can upset good teams.
It's big, it's brash, it's all over the place, but it works for their style. But enough about Harsha's haircut.
This is also what makes me kind of sad that not like more teams are running triple DPS, because I thought that there should be like 1 or 2 teams that should be really good at just running triple DPS all the time.
Come on.
They might not. Well, yeah, they might not win against every team, but they would have like this particular style that they are really good at.
Well, I've been enjoying this stage because I've always been a proponent of like play to your strengths and play your own style rather than trying and always forcing yourself to fit a meta if it doesn't suit you. And the ultimate meta team is the Los Angeles Valiant. Last season, this season with Coach Moon, just like we will do the meta no matter what, and we will only do the meta. And meanwhile, they're sitting down there just getting dumpstered every match. And Chengdu is somehow taking Vancouver to 5 games, winning over Guangzhou. It's just like, great. You realize that this isn't going to be your strength. But if you practice this, maybe in the future, you're going to be really good at a different meta that's more suited to you. And at least you could steal a couple wins in the meantime, rather than just getting absolutely wrecked 24/7.
No, I definitely can appreciate, especially because the key difference here is it's not like Chengdu plays that style and then they're just clowns and they just lose every game and they have no chance. They actually, the amount of times in the game you think like, this isn't going to work again. It does. It's amazing. And obviously they have so many variants of what they want to do as well. Like you said, it's not like they have one approach.
Look what happened. I think it's fun to talk about Chengdu because both of you just played against them last week, and both of you at times struggled against a team that you should, by all means, by all logic in the meta, have absolutely destroyed. And yet it seems like the weirder they do shit, the harder it is for teams to deal with them. And they have some legit good strats.
I was very worried when Chengdu came up, because I was like, I knew that maybe adapting is not one of our strengths, and we played them at the start of the season, but it was always like we kind of needed to figure out what we want to do, because it's just that they are such a different team. But I'm happy that we figured out a way to beat them.
And the thing about them is you have to practice against so many different types of style, or like prepare for so many different, like there's Sombra, Pharah, there's they're like triple DPS with Tracer. They had double sniper, wrecking ball goats, like normal goats now. I guess the Tor Bastion shit, like there's so many different things in their arsenal. It's just crazy to play them.
Not only that, but they have seriously mechanically skilled players too. I mean, Jinmu is insane. And so he can just open up on you, and he's like an X factor that you can't really control for, right? If he's just going to hit a bunch of Hanzo arrows, then that's it.
And one of the things I thought was actually their weakness, like going into this match, was that they weren't very coordinated with like ult combos. And then I thought they were actually cleaner with that when they played against us. So presumably they've improved on that. But like a lot of the times they'd have a clear win condition if they could get like 10% more on a Sombra EMP, and then combine that with like a Pharah ult, and then they just use a Pharah ult without the EMP and then lose, and then use the EMP without any follow-up and then lose. But it looks like they've improved on that, at least.
Indeed.
Sure.
They came out and showed some like really decent Reinhardt goats against you too for the first time, which was a surprise. We'll see if that holds. Like, I'm not sure if that was just a fluke or not. Maybe it was a very good day for them. I don't know, because that's the first time I think they've been able to play at that level. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that last season, often what you could see is that if teams didn't really know what to do, they would just like mirror comp whatever the enemy is doing, and that doesn't really work with Chengdu, because aiming is legit like the best Hammond in the world right now by far, because no one else is practicing that wrecking ball. So you can't just mirror comp, because they will probably just destroy you.
I mean, you don't want to either. It's just like every time somebody tries to like triple or quad DPS. I mean, look what happened in that Guangzhou game. It's like you can't. I said this last week. You can't opt into the Clown Fiesta versus Chengdu. They will just beat you with experience, right? There's no way you're going to be able to do that. Yeah, they're a fun team to watch. I'm really excited to see what they can do in the future. What do you guys think about Paris? Because Paris looked good coming out of the gate. I will say that I had some statistics concerns. Like, we'll get to the Gladiators in a minute, because I think Captain Planet wrote a really good article about the Gladiators, and my own research on their stats was like, this is a team that with a few fixes is going to be really dangerous. But sort of the opposite was true of Paris, where statistically they were not dealing very much damage at all in these team fights, and they were winning a lot based on target selection and setting up plays with crews. And soon, we see Shadowburn coming in this week. Soon was one of, if not statistically, the worst Zarya player in the league when it came to damage output and dealing final blows. He was very low in both categories. So it's not like Defran, who is lower in damage output but high on final blows because he's finishing off kills that his team sets up. Soon was like not doing either of these things, which is hugely problematic for Zarya in this meta. So what do you think about Paris and their decline?
I think the worst thing that Paris could have done, which they did do, is come to LA and scrim before the season started. Because
it helped everyone else.
Yes, it helped everyone else. I think they were probably legit the best GOATS team before the season started, but then everyone just like kind of figured out what to do because they played against Paris, so they could just copy what Paris did and then improve on that. I think Paris just like scrimming was probably like the worst decision, which is kind of weird because you have to probably practice at some point.
Really quick, an aside, it looks like Valiant just fired Moon.
Woo!
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy moly. Well, this is actually one of those few times that we haven't missed major news on this show. That is really shocking.
Normally, we all know Monday night or Tuesdays when all the big moves happen. I told you, Monty, the same thing happens in CSGO, mate. When me and Richard do that by the numbers show, the amount of times people wait till the day after the show's normal date to like magically release that, especially if it's something like we'd burn the fuck out of them. Because obviously, like if you put 5 or 6 days between, you might forget about it. You might not bring it up that much. Okay. Not really a surprise, I guess, in the context of the results.
This is actually something that I never thought was going to happen. And the reason why is just because from talking to the Valiant in that organization last year, they were really all in on Moon. I think they signed him to a very long contract, if I recall correctly. This is off the top of my head, so I could be wrong. But I think they signed him to a pretty long contract, and they really believed in like his system of coaching. And so I thought that they would basically get rid of anybody except for him. Like I thought they would get rid of all the players before they got rid of him. So this is really surprising. I think. I'm not saying I disagree with this decision because I do think that I haven't, like I said, I mean, I've said it on previous episodes, but I do think that it limits the potential of players on this roster quite a bit. The way that he enforces this very, very rigid meta-dependent view of the game. But
you can see it working on different teams, but it depends on your personnel, obviously.
I don't know. I think there are a lot of it seems also apparent that there are a lot of internal issues on the Valiant as well, because obviously there's something deeper to the kooky Custa stuff than we're seeing clearly. That's a very weird decision to make, and it must be in addition to performance, there's some interpersonal issues that must be happening there to cause these kind of problems. But
it's all right. Custa pulled a few strings and problem solved.
I mean, I don't know about this though. Like, is this going to come with player changes? Because remember, I think one thing that we don't give the Valiant credit for was even though they had a pretty good stage 1 and stage 2 in terms of record, they still made all those massive changes halfway through the season last year, which really, really helped them and turned out to be a good idea. So they are a team that has shown that they are willing to make drastic changes mid-season to improve their chances. And obviously this is one of them, but I wonder if this is going to be the last, probably won't be the last thing to happen, right?
I think
what would you guys do with the Valiant at this point? Right. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. I think you have to make some sort of change just because, like, when I watch Valiant, I feel like they have no, it's not that they might not have no idea of what to do in the game, but I feel like maybe they do have an idea and they're just not allowed to execute it, or
I think they don't care.
But I mean, yeah, well, I think with the internal issues, potentially there's that problem as well. But like Valiant was it really did feel like a freebie, even though they had so many close matches in the first stage. Like they had so little pressure on, and I spoke to Monty about this actually. Their Lucio's like basically never wall ride or like do any pressure.
No, they don't set up plays. They don't set up plays.
Yeah, they try to be so reactive, but it's not. I don't think it's good in this meta unless you're like New York and you you literally pick apart every single small mistake that your enemy makes, I guess. So I think they still need to make some other changes. Obviously, the meta's going to shift, but like it seems like there's clearly, I think, internal discord on the team.
So if I was on Valiant, the first thing I would do is probably just get a new player, because I think most of the issues right now are just like mentality issues where people they lost a lot, so they will lose more just because it's like no one believes in winning anymore. I think so what I personally would do is just like try to recruit a new player. I think they didn't really get new players for season 2 anyways, so it a lot of people were saying that it felt like while every team kind of improved in terms of getting new good players onto their rosters, it just felt like Houston and Valiant didn't, and they were just stagnating, and as it turns out, that doesn't work as well if you're against 19 other teams that do that.
Yeah.
I think there are reasons, though, that at least for Houston, because remember, they got Dante, so at least they made an effort.
Sure.
Right. And also, I think we have to remember that the organization is for sale right now, which means probably that they can't, this is pure speculation, but they can't increase their budget. Because if the asset is for sale, you don't want to try and sell something where you're like, look, we're making this thing cost more to operate, right? So they might be in a bit of a hard place right now when it comes to their own infrastructure and their own ability to make roster moves, which would make sense. But obviously that isn't going to be the case for the Valiant, and the Valiant absolutely could make some roster or personnel decisions. And they have, like I said, last year in the past, made drastic changes. You know, I think at this point, if I'm the Valiant, I think Fate has been pretty underwhelming this season. I'm not sure if Fate is going to be a top tank in this league again. I've never been super high on Fate as a player in terms of his skill ceiling. I am very high on Izayaki, and I think Izayaki has had an amazing start to this season. I am very high on Space as a player. I think he's an excellent young player that's only going to get better. So if I'm the Valiant moving forward, these are the two players that I really want to build my team around if possible. I think Overwatch as a game has shown that the flex support position can be so incredibly impactful and also meta-proof, right? In fact, if you have a playmaking flex support, it's basically every meta that we've seen. It has been really, really important to have somebody who's dominant in that position. So I think Izayaki makes a lot of sense. And also D.Va is always there forever. And will always do. The thing is, D.Va, unless they nerf her absolutely into oblivion, because of the utility that D.Va provides to teams with defense matrix and the mobility that she has, it's hard to imagine a time when D.Va will not be a prominent pick in an Overwatch meta.
It's the equivalent of where in League of Legends there's
Lee
two
Sin.
champions, Lee Sin and Thresh, that in theory should always be in some context viable just because the kit is so good. It's like even if you nerf the shit out, the damage, not, you know.
I mean, they had to nerf Lee Sin into the absolute...
He's still played now, mate.
Ground.
Even though he's nerfed 1 billion times, yeah.
So, and I just don't see Blizzard doing that because Blizzard hasn't been very aggressive with nerfs in the past. So there's just, mobility and some of these like crowd control abilities are super important to the game. And when good D.Va players can deny graviton surges with a defense with a right click, right, then that hero is always going to be somewhat good.
Plus the character's literally a South Korean pro gamer. What more do you want? Obviously that's going to be the most OP shit in the game, isn't it? Just saying, it does fit the law.
So do you guys agree? How should the Valiant rebuild? Where do you see their strengths right now?
I'd fire all the DPS immediately.
I'm not in disagreement with you. I think
not hating, just saying.
Kareev, KSF, and Agilities in this meta. Now they might be good in a future meta, but I don't think their DPS has a high upside. Let's just put it that way. Like, what exactly is the ceiling for those DPS players?
I agree.
I don't think it's way up there, unfortunately.
I think you build around Space and Izayaki. I think that honestly, on another team, Fate actually might become a top player again, but I feel like it's not going to be on Valiant, and so I feel like you should just kind of commit.
What do you think he needs to be good again?
Koreans.
Yeah,
that might help. Yeah, there you
So
go.
here's the funny thing, though. Here's the funny thing, is that Noah came into the Overwatch League with the Valiant saying that he didn't want an all-Korean roster.
He said famously on an episode that we did of Esports Salon about franchising, he was the person making
with
the
Jack.
argument.
It was me, Thorin, and Jack, and Noah.
He was basically the person representing the argument of like, you know, ideally in a franchised league, I could have like, you know, mainly non-Koreans, and then hopefully, you know, they'd be good enough to be successful in the game, and, you know, I could market them in a superior manner. And like, it's like, it all sounded great, but then, you know, you have to get in that server and play the games. That's the problem.
Yeah, I think Fate could probably be a top tank again, just if he plays with Korean players. It's just like such a big thing to.
So what team are we putting him on then? Seoul Dynasty?
No, he wants him on Defiant.
This is secret poaching now,
actually,
just low key. I think if he was just with any team of Koreans, you know.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. If I had a chance to trade Yakpung for Fate, I'd take that trade. I'd take it. Yakpung might be the worst player on your team. Just saying.
Possible? I don't think so. Actually.
Well, I'm not going to ask you who the worst player on your team is. I'm not going to answer that question, but
We can all have opinions.
we can have different opinions about that.
But yeah, just going back to Valiant, I think you definitely want Izayaki in space. I think what a lot of people forget is that Izayaki was called Neat in the past, and he was just one of the best flex supports, I think, in Contenders Season 1, or even before that, when he was on Luxury Watch. He might have.
He was on Foxes.
He was on Foxes, NC Foxes.
Okay, but yeah, he always was like kind of good, and he still is. So you definitely want him on the team. You definitely want space on the team. You don't want a flex support player that went to DPS like Kariv, because that's like the dumbest move you can make. Seriously, going from the like most impactful.
Apparently, that Moon guy didn't agree. So anyway, you see how that worked out.
Well, Moon, Moon has made questionable rosters decisions based on his player favoritism from players that he coached in Korea. IMO, including Kariv.
Sure.
And Fate. I think that if you look at the team, though, if you do want to go all Korean, if that's the direction that you have to take the team, and you have to get rid of space, what team? I would love to see space, even though Dallas Fuel, I think RCK is doing a good job. I'd love to see space on Dallas. I think space would have a ton of options for the teams that he would like to go to. Who do you think? Where do you think space could or should go? What trades would you set up if you're Valiant? If you're gonna, so here's the question: if you're gonna go full Korean roster, who do you trade space for? Where you think it's a feasible trade that both teams might agree?
So Hyobin, maybe.
That's
San Francisco Shock. Let's just
Choi
hoard
Hyobin.
all the talent.
I mean, Choi's a really good tank as well. So
yeah, that actually might be feasible. I think Dallas is a team that would really benefit from him, but I don't know what they would trade for him. Like, I don't think OG's on the trading block, and they don't really have any other pieces that I think Valiant would want.
you could trade. Here's an idea. You could, if there's some cash deal involved, you could trade Closer and to Valiant for Custa and space plus a bunch of money.
That could work. Yeah, honestly, that wouldn't be a bad deal for
Monte
either.
is, by the way, low-key a Closer fan.
I love Closer. I think Closer's great.
Yeah. That was one of the few players you actually thought they did a good job rotating in, right? When they were on the old
I think Closer's, and
Korean
especially
boys.
I think that what happened with this meta, just it fell into Closer's lap absolutely perfectly. What was he known for in Korean Contenders when he was playing there, or I should say with GC Busan in Apex? What was he known for? Meticulous ult tracking and Lucio skill. I wonder what's needed in the GOATS meta. Oh, right. It's meticulous ult tracking and Lucio skill. So seems like it's pretty good to have your Closer on your squad right now. And I know that Dallas really likes him, but I think that if they could get Custa back and space in return for Closer, that would be a win-win for both teams.
That would be pretty ridiculous for Costa, though. Like, yeah, you've been traded back to the Dallas Fuel. Well, again, he'd be like, well...
That was before Arrow came on
Sure.
and they had the new coaching staff. So Dallas Fuel's very different now than the how should we say, shit show that he.
Yes.
I think this was the first season, or there was like a match recently where it was the first time that Fuel played without any of the original Envy members.
Yeah. It was closer to the start of the season, and we can talk about Fuel now, I guess, because they actually do look really good.
Oh, here we go. Someone wants to
All
get
right.
hatred. Right, come on then. You volunteered to go first. What do you think, Harsha?
I mean, I think it goes back to strength of schedule, but I think that when you look at Fuel, they don't in game. I don't feel like they're that strong. I do feel like that they're top 8 of Overwatch League, like towards the bottom of the top 8. But at the same time, I don't think that I think there's a very clear difference between the top of that range and like the.
I mean, I agree. It's much less clear where they are. I mean, Reinforce released some power rankings this week, and he said that he placed Fuel at number 6, which based on their wins, and now that they've won against Shanghai again, and I think Shanghai is a pretty good team, so beating them twice, I think, is meaningful. So it is hard, I think, to argue that they are not top 8 right now.
Yeah.
If you're going to make a power ranking. Are they going to win the league? No. But considering that the turnaround that they've had between last season and this season, I think that's kind of impressive in and of itself.
Yeah, I agree with that. But
The question is this, though. Like, if you look, I agree with Harsha on some level. Like, if you look at the strength of the schedule, they've lost to the really good teams, and then the teams they've beaten generally have been further down. And obviously, the game they have next is Boston Uprising, so mid-table team again. There's not really another team to have a chance to prove yourself again. If this team goes into the playoffs, would they actually be able to beat any of the other playoff teams?
I don't think so. The other thing is that Boston
I
actually has a chance to. Boston has a chance to knock Dallas out of playoffs. Actually, if they 4-0, I think Dallas goes in with a negative map differential, even though they're 4.
So speaking of Boston, one of their most interesting statistics is that they are, as of the last time I checked, second worst in the league, and they only win something like 42.9% of their team fights, and yet they actually have had very competitive matches and won matches. And I'm sure, as Barroi knows, as a former guru of Winston's lab, team fight win percentage is a very strong predictor of success, generally speaking, in Overwatch. And I made a video about Boston and how they run these sort of trick plays. And the way Boston is actually winning, how you ask, okay, well, there's second to only the Justice in terms of team fight win percentage. So how are they actually winning these games? And I think a lot of the answer is they just win the right fights through creative shot calling or through trick plays where they get a pick early. Like if they fight you straight up, they generally lose. But their coaching staff and fusions in game are creating plays and shot calling in a way that is allowing them to win fights at the right times, or specific fights that allows them to actually take objectives. Do you guys agree, disagree? What is the correlation, Barroi, do you think, between teamfight win percentage in the GOATS meta and doing well on some of these maps?
It's super high. Teamfight win percentage is super indicative of winning. That's super interesting. I haven't looked at Boston statistics too closely, to be honest. But
what was the percentage that they had for that?
42.9. Last time I checked, so that was a few days ago. Okay. It did not include their latest game against the Mayhem.
That is incredibly low. So
yes.
Like the only reason for that could be that they got like stomped sometimes, but the maps they won were like super close. This is mostly what happens if the number is that low. But as you said, you can win fights at the right time, because like sometimes also what you can do is like lose fights but still like win in kind of map objectives, where, for example, if a team is defending closely on Route 66 and you get one kill but everyone dies, you will still be able to push the payload because the defending team has to back off and wait for the last player now. So I guess that's kind of what happens with Boston. I don't think they are a bad team, so this is actually kind of surprising, to be honest.
I know, it's a really weird outlier, right? Because like I said in that video I was making, they lost a map where I was doing this analysis, but they were running all these weird trick plays against Soul Dynasty in a match that they won, and a lot of it was, oh, this isn't working for us, but if we fool Soul, we'll win a team fight, right?
They have done another good job of again, rebuilding the roster back up, oftentimes without massive names, massive spending budget, getting a team that seems coachable. We've got to give them credit. They're sticking to the narrative. It does work.
It does work. I think Color Hex is not very good, but it's been hit or miss. Like, Fusions is good. Aim God is good. I mean, Note rather is good. Neko is very good, but Neko's no longer on the team. And also continuously forgets to change his Boston spray. Weird. I wonder why that is. Yeah. You should remind him. It's
almost like he's holding on to something there that he doesn't quite want to fully let go of yet, and move on. Yeah.
So I think they have hit on some like exciting new players. I thought Alamo did very well at the World Cup, even though we haven't seen him a whole lot in the Overwatch League yet. So I have hope for him as well. I'm not really sold on Blase or Color Hex yet, but we'll see if they can do better. Do
you think they should add a couple more players? I mean, when I saw their roster, I actually assumed cynically that's what they'd done. They wanted to see how these players worked out, and then if you need to, you add like 2 more for whatever positions you need, going into the next stage or something. Do you think they add more players? They've got a pretty small roster.
The thing is, I think it depends on how drastic the meta shift is, because if tanks keep being prevalent and you can just run goats pretty often, they might just become like a one-trick team and continue with this lineup, not having to spend too much money, and like it could probably work. But if
they meta switch, they need a DPS though, right?
I think probably, yeah.
Again, I think it just depends. I think they're like, if they are confident in their coaching and their shot calling to continue doing what they're doing right now, and they think they can be 50% or slightly below 50% just on that strength, then do you make changes? I don't know. Depends on what their goals are.
Probably not, because I don't think you need strong DPS to be good at Overwatch. And
just entirely as a game? Not just this meta?
Yeah. I think entirely as a game, DPS is like the least impactful role in Overwatch. If you want to be like on the very top, I guess having one good DPS is kind of necessary, but you don't really need 2 strong people who are good at hitting heads, as long as you're good at the other stuff. Because it feels like Overwatch is just a game where you really need coordination and communication. It has to be on point. All the synergy has to be there, and just clicking heads is like a bonus, I guess. But yeah, I think Boston will probably not. I don't see them making changes. One, because you don't need it necessarily, and second, because they never did that they wouldn't. I wouldn't expect them to, because they wouldn't spend extra money probably, just because they are a team who want to sell their players, not buy new ones. So
they're going dollar for dollar. They're trying to keep it nice and efficient, managing it's like Mama Hawks out there just managing the budget based on what she gets every month. She's doing her best. She's working 2 jobs for you kids.
I mean, all I'm going to say is Shanghai Dragons ended this stage 3-4, and Boston could also end up 3-4, but with a better map differential. Sure. And who made a lot of money selling Gamsu to Shanghai? Right?
Yeah.
Whose roster do you think costs way less than Shanghai's? So
I'd love to know how much the roster of Boston costs entirely, just compared to DK. That's all I want to comment is one player. I just want to know, compared to that one player, what are the numbers? Because I feel like I'd have to give even more props to Boston. Thing is, based on what you're saying,
I would guess that Boston's roster. This is purely based
speculation, of course.
Speculation. I would say that Boston's roster is probably worth 1.5 to 2 decays.
There we go.
That's my guess.
Sounds plausible.
The other thing you have to consider is that Boston might be the only team to have is probably the only team to have made money on their lineup, just selling players and being on a budget. So, I mean, you kind of have to respect that, even if you don't like the
thing is, Barroi, if what you're saying is accurate, like you don't need like, sure, you need like a 1-star DPS, maybe, somebody you can like build a team around, but you don't need like 2, 3, whatever.
I mean, in that case, Boston had that, but unlucky.
A while ago, yes, yeah. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe that was memory hold. Maybe they never had those. I never know. I never know where I'm at in this game at this point in time. So here's the thing, though. If NYXL are the best, but then they also just have this, ridiculous luxury of all these star DPSs? Is that just like when you have like a pretty cool car and then you just put the decals on it, you put the spoiler on the back, you know, you've got like the fucking nice, like the driving gloves, like none of it's really technically necessary. The car's good as it is, but you know, it's just you add it on just to look cool.
That's exactly how it feels. Like you don't need Pine jumping on your car, right? So it's just like a nice little extra.
I don't think you'd ever need that.
But I as I said, I don't think you need.
No, Pine's like the dog who you have on the passenger side with its head out the window and the tongue just flapping in the wind. That just makes it also feel more baller. Like that feels like, you know, you're swagging out, aren't you? Like, look at my car in my life. This is the shit.
So you want to have that. Ideally, you want to have a car where everyone looks at your fucking dog, right? But at the same time, you can have a fast car, but no one really looks at it. It just looks like boring. It's, I don't know, it's just some ugly purple red car or some bullshit.
And then obviously Chengdu Hunters is like a mini metro, but souped up under the engine. It's got like only this one driver knows how to handle it. He can take like every corner. He's like got the brakes all tuned perfectly. That one driver's sick though. So.
And you know, we've talked about these car analogies before, but then we have the go-kart that is the Washington Justice, right?
There we go. Yeah, doesn't even have an engine. You know, poor handling all around. Generally, you know,
we've
can't survive collisions.
We made the analogy before. Wizard Hyung. It was awesome when you were winning that race in a Ferrari, and you looked like a god tier driver. But now you have to win this race, or at least, you know, place somewhere in it above last place with this go-kart. And how are you going to do that?
Yeah, turns out Moneyball isn't just taking all the money in the world and buying one of the best teams in Overwatch. if you have no money, you have to buy good players that no one looks at, and don't buy trash.
You know, don't buy trash. Solid advice. You know, I've never really been a fan of Moneyball. I wouldn't want to be the Moneyball guy. I would rather be the money baller, the baller with all the money to spend on nice things. Moneyball is highly overrated. Just be a money baller instead. That's my life right there.
I think Moneyball is kind of a thing, but not like. I don't think Wizard Young knows what Moneyball is. He tried to be a money baller, and he kind of got lost in translation.
I mean, technically, he is balling out of control with money, but unrelated to the actual team. Unrelated to the lineup in the game, though. That's the problem. And also, you know, because he only has real money, that can't actually affect the team. You know, the team has to buy the players. You know.
Yeah, what are you guys thoughts on the Justice right now? Is this slide going to continue? They end up playing Florida next week.
I'm kind of surprised because I thought they would be worse. I think they have a chance against Florida. Actually, I think they'll have a chance to not go 0-28 in this season.
It's so hard to say, I feel like, because I actually do think that they might win a match reasonably soon too. Even though the team is like bad, like I guess it's been pointed out before, but they actually do win quite a few control maps and like keep those close. The problem is like it's just one of those teams that does nothing in the game. Like I feel like when they win, it's because the opponents just make so many ridiculous mistakes, and then when they lose, it's just because they did nothing themselves. So
to be fair, they have only won 5 games, 5 maps this season.
I was casting their game against Seoul, and it's just like it was so bad because they would stand there. What was it on Dorado? I think it was. Yeah, they won Dorado. Now this is the crazy part, but they won Dorado. But on their defense, they have this huge ult advantage, and they just stand there and let New York poke them into like ult equality. They don't make smart engagement decisions. They just stand there and look at you until you have as many ults as they do. It's ridiculous.
It just feels like they don't know win conditions or like really
timings,
have
anything.
Game sense. Yeah, it's just like game sense in general is just a huge.
I think to be fair to Wizard Young, it's impossible to tell what his effect on this team is because it's not like he's got a lot to work with here.
Well, the thing is though that he built the team, and I think if you if you say before the season starts that you're the pioneer of Moneyball in esports, which you
Sure.
said quite often,
Yeah.
and then you buy those players, then that's your fault. I mean,
Yeah.
we probably didn't have a lot of money either, but look at us. We are third place right now. You could say that we moneyballed kind of, and it worked. It's just that I don't think Wizard Young has done a good job at finding the right talent for the team.
Yeah. I've got to agree with that, Monty. Like, here's the thing. Outside of the context of what you just said there, I agree. Like, there's not a lot you can do here. This is like asking some super duper chef to make something with like the most terrible ingredients of all time. It's like you're not going to make something great out of it. But if you did also hype the fact that you're sick of finding like players that are cheap that are going to be really good, you kind of have set yourself up for that one. You know, you can't really back out at the end. Like, well, it's not my fault. These players, whoever picked these players, is a bloody idiot. I can't coach them better. It's like, you know.
Did he pick players? Do we know that with 100%
Yes.
certainty?
We do.
Okay, Harsha does because he was in talks with Justice to be part of that team, so we do know. If that's the case, yeah, it looks bad. Although I have heard some people have been saying that Corey actually is a very good hit scan DPS player, is a promising North American DPS player. What do you guys or what are the bright spots here from what you guys have seen?
Corey is actually the biggest bright spot, I thought, and he's actually looked worse than he ever has on Justice. So, I mean, he's playing Zarya, which is a role he probably wasn't familiar with until it became clear that Ghost was going to be the Overwatch League meta. But like, it just makes me feel bad seeing him like constantly trashed when and he's not performing well. But like, I know he has the talent to be a good player, I think.
Sure. Let's just see if he gets the team to actually give him a shot. Right, by the way, I don't know how much you want to talk about the Fusion because we have discussed them on every episode, but I will say this, right? Did you see that? I noticed everyone on Reddit was loving it, where Avast said basically that you will not see Fraggy and Carpe in the lineup at the same time. Which, by the way, translation, the more accurate way to say that is you'll never see Fraggy. That's logically what he just said. I don't know why he said it like it was some sort of mad Sophie's choice. Like, oh my god, which one though will I choose? Like, come on, that's what you're basically saying is just say goodbye to Fraggy. It's like. Which again, I still like. I know you shouldn't get too caught up in narratives, but it does hurt my soul that like one of the few players who obviously has basically been playing GOATs his whole life is just not allowed in the game. What is this?
I really, this annoys me so much, and we've been over this time and time again on this show that I think you should at least be trying Fraggy in some of these maps. Maybe what Avast said is true. Right. I don't know the inner workings of the Philadelphia Fusion, and obviously if you're Philly, Carpe is your team. So you need to do what Carpe wants.
Makes sense.
And if this is, personally, I would have thought maybe Carpe wouldn't want to lose so much or look so bad in this meta, but maybe he doesn't care about that, or he legitimately thinks Carpe is super bad. I don't know. Or Fraggy is super bad, rather. I don't know. But it does go some way to explaining why we haven't seen Fraggy this season.
Yeah, I think overall Philly is probably one of the weaker playoff teams that could make playoffs, and probably will or might do. Their last match is against Paris, right? So it's not going to be a given. But if they make playoffs, I think they'll be one of the weaker teams in playoffs. Which is just, I think that a lot of the teams had like kind of rough starts, but then improved a little bit. Some teams had up and downs, obviously, but Philly was just like very constant from the start till now. It doesn't feel like much changed. They didn't really improve a lot, and while they beat London in the first week, London improved like a lot, while they just stayed where they are, and it's not very impressive, I think, right now.
I'm personally not sold on them either. I think the loss to Fuel was really telling because when you think about Philly, you think they're going to be one of the top teams in the league, and then I don't think Fuel is. I think Fuel is top 8, but I don't think they're anywhere near the top of the league. And then Philly lost to them pretty convincingly, I would say. So I don't know. I think that maybe it's just not their meta, or maybe they realize that if they just need to peak at the right time, and they are still in playoff territory, and so they have some time to go before this is actually worrying. Again, like last year, they also were like 5-5, I think, in the first stage. Didn't look that strong, and then suddenly became like a top 2 team in the league for stage 2 towards the end, and then stage 3 they were competitive with the top of the league as well. So,
I just don't see it happening in this meta. That's the issue.
Yeah,
they really look like they came out sort of shaky, but we're winning some matches, and it looks like they're one of the least improved teams, if that makes sense. I feel like many teams have gotten better, some teams have gotten worse, but Philly has just been like at the same level of GOATS play basically the entire time.
Yeah. Then is this a team that you do the tank trade with Valiant for, Monty?
Fade and Carpe are good friends.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You could maybe do something like that, but I think the problem is that there's no guarantee that Fraggy is going to be better in a different meta. Because when he looked best on Winston last season was when he was playing with Snillo, and they had those really cool backline dives, and they coordinated very well. But he was very specifically only good at Winston in that situation. So I'm not confident that Fraggy, you want him in a Rhine meta, right? Which is why you would have Fraggy on your bench for literally this exact purpose, which is why it's weird he's not being played.
I would love to know what possibly causes that sort of a rift, because of all the players, you would think Korean player who's been on bad teams, Finnish guy who's going to be fairly, not super outspoken or anything. You think, how do players like that have a do it to the death argument or something?
Yeah. Fraggy is his personality is very industrious, hardworking, team focused. So it is hard to believe that there would be this much of a conflict. He's not Fissure, right?
Indeed. Right, well, since you promised earlier that we would talk about the Gladiators, let's just get everyone in LA to hate us, right? What about the Gladiators then? Another team?
No, I think the Gladiators...
You like them from last week?
I think they played super well last week. I think that
Have they turned the corner, though?
I think that if last week's Gladiators are one of the best teams in Overwatch League. They tightened up so many of their issues. Their issues were very transparent, to be fair, and I think it is worth going and reading Captain Planet's article on the Overwatch League website, because it does show a lot of the stats that I was bringing up in the Atlanta game, which are they were very bad at securing the first kill in a team fight, which is super important in GOATs. They were giving up first death a lot in team fights. So it sounds easy, but all they had to do, quote unquote, was make sure that they could get a kill and not die first, which is much harder than it sounds. But their conversion was actually really good. So it's when they did get a first kill, they would win. They'd be a very good team at winning team fights. Even when they lost the first kill, I think they were, I'm trying to remember, second or third in the league when it came to playing from behind. And most of these deaths that they were experiencing were Void or Roar or Decay running off on their own and just randomly dying for no reason. And so when they came against Atlanta and they just stayed in a group and they stayed balled up, they played really, really well. And we heard Big Goose say in an interview afterwards that they felt like they had some communication issues that were coming into play on stage, which would explain a lot of what was happening, because mostly it was one of the Korean players running away from their Western backline effectively. And from what I had heard too, a lot of people were tweeting afterwards, and I'm sure you guys, having scrimmed them, can give insight that this was a team that was now cashing in their scrim bucks. That is to say that they were always performing well in scrims. They just weren't translating that to stage.
The scrim buck economy proved to be predictive after all. There we go.
Our scrim bucks are quite good, so I don't know. I can't really talk about other teams.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
Barroi, I saw you. Oh, sorry. Coming after this, though, because I saw you were casting a doubt when Monty was painting the picture there. So come on, Harsha. What was your point going to be, mate?
Yeah, I agree with Monty to an extent, but I also think that I don't think it was necessarily a problem between maybe communication between the Koreans and the Westerners on the team, even though that kind of does seem like an obvious answer, especially when Bishu's not playing with them. I think that they have some players that are classically really passive, and then they have some players that are really aggressive. Decay and Goose are extremely aggressive players. and they had kind of like discord between how like the tempo they wanted to play at, and I feel like if they and it looks like they did a better job of this within the last week, and actually do look like a scary team now. But if they kind of follow Decay's lead, I feel like that team could be really insane. Like they could be a team of like, I guess, of like our style or Shock style, where they're led by like a really good Zarya player, and if they just need to kind of follow up on him. That's sort of my take on it, but I'm not sure because I'm not in the team, but
Yeah, I wasn't too convinced about their scrim bugs. I don't know. I heard that as well, but from like my perspective, they were never like really top tier. They were never really up there with the other teams, and I just think that they try super hard at copying Paris style of goats, which is Paris style of goats is just okay, let's just all go in. If someone dies, we still all go in and we might just win the fight, which works super well because if everyone just wants in, the enemy just at some point we won't know who to focus anymore because they got the first kill, but Paris will just like go in hard anyways. So which I think Gladiators kind of tried to copy and now maybe got kind of proficient with. But I was never really convinced that they're a good team, and I still think that, good as let's say Shock, Vancouver and New York, and I still don't think that because it felt like last week there were still a lot of hiccups here and there when they played Guangzhou especially. It didn't look as clean as it could have at times, but it's also possible that coming next week they'll get rid of all of their communication issues and whatsoever, and everyone just starts speaking perfect Korean because that's what you want, right? You don't want your Koreans to learn English. You want your English people to learn Korean.
Well, to be fair, we won't be seeing the Gladiators next week or the week after. They are eliminated. They finished all their matches. They're eliminated. So unfortunately, we're not actually going to get to see them. But I think that having gone 1-4, turning it around with a couple of wins in this last week, and I think by my money, based on what we saw, I would put them as a top 8 team in this league, which sucks.
Yeah, top eight for sure. Yeah,
I agree with that.
I like that strategy though. That is basically like some sort of like a last gasp sort of coach genius strategy of like, but if we all run in, they can only shoot, each gun can only shoot one person at a time. How are they going to know who to shoot? It's like, there's sort of like a mad counterintuitive logic where you're like, you keep thinking like, you just want to look like, in like Curb Your Enthusiasm, where there's that famous trope that repeats, where when someone lies, he tries to like look and like squint at them and look from different angles to see like whether they're telling the truth. And it plays like that very particular sort of music behind it. It's like that. You're sort of going, does that make, I don't think it does, but does that make sense? I don't want to seem stupid by saying it doesn't, so does that make sense? So it almost makes sense. That's the key. It's like sophistry. It almost makes sense. Sounds good.
It does make sense. Something I tell my players is a lot is we want to win like New York, but we want to lose like Paris. Because sometimes...
reasonable statement to make. You've got a lot of actual straight fire quotes. I think it's just the Germanists is toning it down, isn't it?
Paris is definitely the title of this episode, so congrats.
Well, the other one, of course, was something along the lines of like, you don't want to sign players that are trash or something like that. He's got a lot of straight fire quotes. I feel like the German tone is just like, he's not putting enough energy into it. If he put more emotion, he'd be killing it right now. Pretty good.
I agree with what you're saying though, right? Because if you're gonna lose a team fight, the way Paris was losing is they were losing a player, but they were fighting very well.
Sure.
They were emphasizing target selection. So if you're good enough at calling targets and everybody's on the same page, you can win fights even if you've lost a player in this meta, right? So you might as well, if you're going to lose, just go all in on somebody and see if you can even out the fight, right? Is this what you mean?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean. Yeah, yeah. Paris does this incredibly well. You can see sometimes if on payload maps, if they start to lose the fight, they just like go in hard. Sometimes they might even win the fight, and if they don't win the fight, they at least all delay so hard that it takes like a minute for the card to get moving at all. Where some teams would just back off at some point and the card gets like free space while the rest of the players are being picked off. So Paris does this really well.
I guess in some ways, Monty, they are employing our social media strategy that I referred to earlier. You know, if you're gonna get beaten anyway, let's get a few fucking shots off yourself. Let's make them, at least make them remember that we were in a fight. You know, it wasn't just a one-sided beatdown. Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, then. Does that, assuming the meta doesn't translate, then logically, Monty, you're sort of predicting them to be a sleeper good team next stage, then, if they can carry this over.
Gladiators?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Gladiators will get back on track. Their coaching staff has always been strong. They've come in with intelligent strategies. They play around their opponents really well. I think they're one of the best coached teams in the league. And as the more they integrate these new players into their roster, the better they're going to do. So I think Gladiators are definitely going to be a season playoff team. It would be really surprising if they weren't, because they have all the pieces, right? They've got excellent players, great coaching staff. It would take some real, tragic play, I think, to keep them out.
This is where I feel like I should make again, one of those, like, it's one of these crap moments where I just make a pun. So it would be some sort of a joke, like, I didn't know that Bumper was actually the coach of the Gladiators as well. Although then again, maybe actually that doesn't make sense. He's more of a Lucio player, likes to just boot people out of the way, doesn't he? So
he did.
If you didn't watch Overwatch League Season 1, you missed that one. You missed a lot of stuff, to be fair. Not Shanghai Dragons. You didn't miss anything there. That wasn't good, but there was some stuff you missed. Like, if you enjoy watching Tracer kill people, as opposed to, like, my feelings about the current meta is, like, I love to watch, obviously, I come from Counter-Strike, I love to watch sick aimers just pop off. So when I think of all the Widows and Tracers that could be playing right now, that meme everyone posts on the internet at the moment, Harsha, where it's like Sasuke from Naruto, and he's being held up by the throat like that. Like, I feel like that's, like, all my favourite DPS players. And it's just like a Brigitte or something just strangling them against the wall. Like, come on, give them a fucking break. Can I see some of that? No. And then they're like, good news though, they're playing Zarya. How was that good news? Did you hear the part where I like seeing sick DPS players pop off? I don't want to watch him bubble people. That's not sick. That's like in League of Legends, Monty, if like some sick AD carry was just out playing like Nami or something. Like, what is this? What happened? Where was my hyper carry?
Overwatch right now is legit like Legends without having a mini map or third person.
No, that's the thing, actually. I noticed this when we were playing our first match of the season, but because coaches actually get the overhead map view and like the stream view, I was doing the thing where in like MOBAs, you every like 2-3 seconds you like check the mini map.
That's how I cast.
Yeah, so I guess you're probably more used to this then, but I used to just like almost always look at the mini map. But now, like, you need to see like the micro as well, like the Zarya bubbles, like the Brigitte like skill usage. So I was just like scanning it like a MOBA. So I actually didn't really get that comparison to like GOATs being like a MOBA now. But now, like, I guess from Monty's point of view when he's casting, and now when I'm watching it from like the coaches, like the dugout, it makes more sense.
So you actually, what I've noticed about like exactly what you're saying, when I've been casting this meta, I actually look at the mini map less than I used to last season, because it's, what's going to happen. Like, they're going to smash into each other in the same place. There's very few times that the mini map is providing me useful positional information.
It's not going to be some godlike flank that turns the whole thing on.
Sometimes with San Francisco, it depends on the team. Like, if I do try and keep an eye out sometimes for Sinatra on some of these flanks, or if I'm casting Chengdu and I need to know where the Hammond is. But it is way less important to look at that mini map in this meta than it was in previous metas. So I would say the team fighting is more like a MOBA in this case, but the actual positioning, you need the minimap far less. But usually what I do is I will constantly just be looking back and forth and casting between the two monitors, and I'll almost exclusively be looking at the minimap before fights start, and even sometimes well into a fight, because I'm listening to Doa, who's watching the main production feed. So that, and I'm watching how people are moving in the fight. But yeah, it has been less impactful overall, because for the most part, it's just like 2 6-man squads just ramming into each other in a choke. Like, I know what's going to happen. Right? And it's much more important for me to see, like you're saying, bubbles, Brigitte stuns, cookies flying around.
Oh, by the way,
I would say.
By the way, in light of this, I've got an update for you, Monty, from your favorite community, the Reddit League of Legends community. Who you're much beloved there. You're sort of like an icon in the Russian Orthodox Church in many ways in that community. So,
well, a lot of people hate me too. So to be fair,
sure. Sure, a lot of people hate religion as well, mate. So anyway, here's the thing, right? I saw there was a thread. I can't remember the context. Maybe it was when like Machine and Frankie came into LCS, and then people were referencing the old casters and stuff that were there, you know, whatever. And someone referenced you, right? And someone said, "This is hilarious. This is why I have to update you, because it's one of those comments where it's like you're almost in awe of how wrong it is. It's like you're amazed that a person could, on the one hand, comprehend English, like sentences, things like that, but then still put together a sentence that is so perfectly wrong in every respect. So what happened was, right? Someone said something like the old usual line of like, "Oh, of course, Monty now is stuck doing Overwatch or whatever," which is like, okay, which can ignore all the inaccuracies there. But then someone said, yeah, and I bet he hates it because he was someone who always emphasized macro in League of Legends, whereas everyone knows Overwatch is just an arcadey shooter. And like, I just thought that would be the ultimate trigger for you with this meta, Monty. Arcadey shooter. Like the idea that that is what this game is at. Like, have you seen this in this year? Like, there's nothing like that. I've just told you, I've just spent about 10 minutes waxing lyrical about you don't get any of that. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, like
it's hard to be more wrong than that sentence.
It's been said a lot, but this actually is, and I loved this the other day because I was listening to Semler Cast and Watchpoint after the show. Like, we linked to him. He was just going crazy casting Hotba on Farah because it was like he was like a man who had been pacing, walking through the desert for days and had just gotten a drink of that sweet, sweet DPS water again. And he was just so happy that he was going to stay alive because he's just going fucking nuts casting this Farah, sounding so joyful, able to see a DPS hero again. And I'm here just sitting, I said on the desk, I said, I'm here just thinking to myself, the whole game has been a play-by-play meta so far. Finally, it's Monte Cristo's turn to have an analysis-based meta where we can really dig into it. It's about macro play. It's about teamwork. It's about sequencing of abilities, ultimate economy, fucking badass. And honestly, you guys are analysts. It actually is fun for analysts. Like, this meta is very interesting.
Put it this way. So the first game of the season where NYXL played against Boston, if this was an arcadey shooter, Boston would have zero chance in that game. Zero. That was actually a reasonable close game at times. Zero.
So I do think taking myself and my own desires out of this, I do understand why the fans are not thrilled. If you're Joe Pleb 316, like this game is not.
Someone make that account and message Monty after the show when it goes live, because that's the other thing that started now as well. Is obviously you can just change your name to anything on Discord. Like every time me and Richard, when we were doing that like No Majors Club, when we were streaming the major, if we ever referenced any person that had like dissed us in esports, 2 seconds later you'd have a fake account of that, adding you on Discord, messaging you, "Oh, sorry about that, Thorin, when I fucked you over years ago." It's like, fuck off, guys, stop doing that. That's annoying. Like, because I was getting all messages where I talked about some old story where like DJ Wheat flamed me. So obviously immediately I had like a DJ Wheat like, "Sorry about that, Thorin, if we can have a chat about this." It's like, there's no way that's actually him though, is it? Come on.
All right. Well, yes. I think but from an analyst perspective, this meta is actually really interesting. And
especially the analogy you gave, by the way, that like, I agree. As soon as I saw Goats played, it's so reminiscent of League of Legends team fights. Because it's not about like just who you have as a player and what abilities they have. It's like the order you use it in, how you chain them together. Like like the contrast to season 1 was like, yes, okay, you hold the transcendence based on the Dragon Blade. Like, there's that, but like there's not that much more beyond that. Beyond that, you have to watch the crosser. You have to see if the Trace is killing people, if the tank keeps them alive. It's like the actual like level of nuance now is amazing. Yeah, I understand though it's harder to get.
Well, it's really hard because, like I brought it up earlier, it's fun to see things like New York focus Sinatra so hard and play around grabs in a different way. But if you're not an experienced viewer of the game and you just want to see, flashy plays, watching them grab and then mono wade into a grab with a shield to cut off line of sight and then Sinatra, like one person dying, doesn't seem that exciting. Is it super exciting to me? Yes, it's really cool. Like I'm loving it, but it's hard to make other people excited about that because it's just not flashy.
Yeah, there's a lot of rotations where you just like try to get into a good position and it just looks like teams are just walking around each other, nothing is happening, but it's like literally about getting those like few percentages that you want to have like better positioning, so you have a few percent of a higher chance to win the fights that's come. It's if you come from League of Legends, that's like really interesting to watch and really interesting to get your players to know well.
But I don't think most people are coming from MOBAs to Overwatch. I think they're shooter fans who want to play McCree and Widowmaker, and so when those don't exist, they tend to not be that interested.
Well,
Plus,
you
it
might
does
feel
have
like-
the problem where obviously people who are playing the game and then watching, it's just such a mad disconnect from what they're playing. Like they're watching the game like, where's Reaper? When's he coming out? Is there any Genjis in this game? It's like, no, have you been watching? You won't be seeing any of those. Again, my rant about 10 minutes ago, you're never going to see that. Like,
Yeah, they might be lucky though. Blizzard did a lot to get rid of goats for stage 2, so I don't think we'll.
are you
have to
convinced
worry.
it'll be gone?
Not yet, but I mean they did a lot of changes. We couldn't practice obviously on the new patch yet, but
Sure.
it just seems that there will probably be a lot less goats. I don't think it might just not be gone entirely, but I think there will be a lot.
I mean, nobody wants goats to be gone because it should be a viable strategy, and it is
Yes.
an interesting strategy. So
It's
I
too
don't want it to
pervasive.
be gone. I just don't want it to be there most of the time. Like it should be
Yes.
a niche strategy for certain points. or
Yeah,
certain
I
maps.
expected to still be there for like 3rd-point payload maps or something like that, where you're in enclosed areas and you can't really utilize DPS to the full potential. But for the most part, I think we'll have a lot more different kind of compositions coming up.